The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me high upon a rock. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his sacred tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord.
Trust me and my big feet.
Well held, Sue.
Yep. Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God my Saviour. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. Do not hand me over to the desire of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord.
Brilliant, thank you.
A seat, and if you turn up in your Bible, Psalm 27. Weston, could you just put the lights on? Psalm 27, it's on page 557 in the church Bibles. And the questions that we've got for discussion groups this week, if it's helpful to anyone, just to have a kind of outline of what we're going through. I've got a few here, there's some more at the back, if anyone wants one. It's great that we're going to be looking at Psalm 27 together. And as we begin, just wondering whether any of you have heard it said that courage is not the absence of fear, it's the ability to act in the presence of fear. So take a soldier in battle, or a firefighter about to enter a burning building, or perhaps you at school taking an exam, or in hospital facing an operation, or in the cafe wanting to talk about Jesus. You're not being courageous if you pretend you're not afraid. Being courageous is overcoming fear. It's carrying on in the face of fear, even as chaos and calamities come upon us. And that for me is good news, because I can be a fearful and fragile person and yet live with courage and confidence. And this is what Psalm 27 is about. The first sentence talks about whom shall I fear? Of whom shall I be afraid? With the last sentence, the Psalm's conclusion, calling on us to remain confident, be strong, and take heart and wait on the Lord. And I want to, and I want you to sing this psalm story, this story of courage in the face of chaos, of faith growing amidst fear, of confidence to act when there's great concern and confusion, having a certain calmness and composure when calamities and crises hit. How do we do that? How does the experience of this psalmist become our story so that we can sing it, so that we can tell it to others? Well, the psalmist here longs for and does three helpful things. Firstly, in sentences 1 to 3, he tells his fears about God. Then secondly, in sentences 4 to 6, he makes it his life goal to gaze on beauty. And thirdly, in sentences 7 to 12, he tells God about his fears. So he's not just telling his fears about God, he's now speaking directly to God, and he's telling him what he's afraid about. And he does all this before summing up and concluding in sentence 13 with this growing resolve and confidence, sure that he will see the goodness of God in the land of the living, and telling himself this repeated message: keep strong, take heart, and wait on the Lord. So let's begin by looking at sentences 1 to 3 and think how it is the psalmist's story that he tells his fears about God. Did you know, and this kind of links in with the kids' story, I wonder whether you know that the single most influential person in your life is you. We spend more time listening to ourselves than we do to anyone else. Now, I know people say that it's the first sign of madness to be talking to yourself. But there is, of course, an internal dialogue, our self-talk, that is going on all of the time. And there's a sense in which we need to hear and understand what we're saying, what we're afraid of and worrying about, what we're wanting and believing, why we're doing the things that we do. But with that, we can do far too much listening to ourselves and not enough talking to ourselves. And so we can wake up in the morning or perhaps in the middle of the night, and immediately all the concerns and chaos of yesterday floods our minds. It just goes over and over, round and round in our heads. Or maybe, like me, when you slip up and make a mistake, we berate ourselves and we tell ourselves we're stupid and worthless. Or perhaps it's that we see some new gadget, or someone's flashy car, or their supposed perfect life, and we tell ourselves, I want that. No, actually, I need that. No, actually, I demand that, and I will do anything to get that. We need to be aware. We need to be alert to our self-talk. But we need to talk to ourselves like the psalmist does here in these opening sentences. And mainly, we need to be telling ourselves and our fears about God. The psalmist begins, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Do you hear him talking to himself, reminding and reassuring himself? The Lord, He's my light. He's my salvation. When things get dark, He's there as light, making sense, bringing hope, bringing his presence into that situation. When things are going horribly wrong and everyone seems out to get us, he's there. He comes to rescue me, to save me. He's my salvation. The psalmist is telling himself and his fears that with a God like that, no matter how dark and dangerous things get, how threatening and violent people are, he is safe and secure. No one can harm him or defeat him. In fact, with a God like this on his side, with him and for him, he won't just protect him from his enemies. He will see that he gains victory over them. Look at sentences 2 and 3. When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. Now, what are we to make of this? Are we to think that because the Lord is our light and our salvation, that nothing bad is ever going to happen to us? That no one is going to be able to hurt us and physically harm us? Would ever be able to kill us or abuse us or rob us or insult us? Well, clearly not. That isn't the experience of the psalmist who's going through all these calamities, and nor is it the experience of any Bible character or any Christian who has lived ever since. Yet it is the psalmist's experience, and it is the story of every Christian that God is with us and near us in hard times, and he is for us and does act for us, perhaps not immediately ending our troubles and stopping us being hurt and harmed, but working to overcome, to overturn the bad, and ultimately to bring about good and victory. God is our light and our salvation, helping us see and make sense in the darkness and chaos, helping us to know that things are being overturned. Will ultimately God be bringing good out of evil? That's good news about God that we're to be telling our fears. To know God is with us and for us and ultimately will take us to be with him. That's what we need to be knowing. That's what we need to be remembering and reminding ourselves of and telling our fears. That God is with us. He's for us. And there's no one and nothing that ultimately will overcome and destroy us. That we are safe in our Father's hands. Now, your fear, that's going to try to be telling you a different story, a pack of lies. That your fears are going to be telling you that you're on your own, that you are going to be destroyed. And whenever you hear that, we have to be reminding ourselves, we have to be telling ourselves the truth. The Lord, he's my light. He's my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Now, you have to be doing that repeatedly, time and time again, reminding and reassuring yourself of this reality, because you can be certain that your fears are going to repeatedly be telling you a very different story, a lie of doom and destruction, of abandonment and aloneness. But we do have God's protection and favour. We are assured of victory and the ultimate defeat of our enemies. And that's the good news about God that we need to be telling our fears. But talking rather than listening to our fears is not the only thing the psalmist does here in his quest for courage in the face of chaos and calamities. Secondly, in sentences 4 to 6, he makes it his life goal to gaze on beauty. Look at sentence 4. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord, and to seek him in his temple. When David wrote this psalm, the temple wasn't yet a permanent building. It was a very elaborate pop-up tent known as the tabernacle. And you may know that in the middle was a curtained-off area called the Holy of Holies. And there in the middle of that was the Ark of the Covenant, the object that Indiana Jones was supposed to be searching for in that film Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was right there, and that ark, that chest, that was the place where the high priest once a year came to offer a sacrifice. And at that moment, God would come down and cover that whole place with a cloud that literally glowed with his glory. The Shekinah cloud, or Shekinah glory as it became known. And for a Jew, this moment, that was the highlight of their whole year. The time and place when God came most close and most visibly was seen to make his home among people. And David's longing and desire is that moment and everything involved in it would be his continual day-by-day experience. That he would live in God's immediate presence all of the time and be able to gaze on the beauty of the Lord. Now, this wasn't actually something that David was ever allowed to do. He was the king, not the high priest. He wasn't allowed in the Holy of Holies. All he could do was stand and watch from the outside at a distance and long and dream about being up close and personal. Now, for us today, amazingly, things have moved forward. Jesus, he is the fulfillment of all of these things. Everything that is pictured in this event. He is the temple. He is the high priest who goes to make a sacrifice. In fact, he is the sacrifice. And most of all, he is God who comes down and lives with people. He's the visible presence and person of God, come as a human being. And he and the work that he accomplished, he's beautiful. He's glorious. He is what we are to be gazing upon, to see the beauty of the Lord. If we're to make it our life goal, to gaze on beauty, then we have to be up close and personal with Jesus. We don't have to stand at a distance. We can be face to face. We can gaze into his eyes, as it were. Not literally, but by faith. As we live moment by moment in a close relationship with him, looking steadily and intently on him as he's revealed to us in the Bible, full of admiration and amazement. Do you know that it's increasingly being recognized how important gazing upon beauty is for those who are fearful and fragile as a result of chaos and calamities in life? One of the ways that people are helping those who have experienced trauma is to encourage them to simply gaze on beauty. When we see and have seen ugliness and horror and darkness and depravity, to gaze on beauty instead has a huge impact on us for good. Perhaps it's being in nature, or getting creative and artistic ourselves so that we produce beauty that we can gaze on and appreciate. Because in the face of ugliness and horror, beauty captures and captivates our hearts like nothing else. As we gaze on beauty, we grow new, healthy affections and emotions, new loves and desires. We're calmed and refocused. Our troubled hearts and minds are settled. Now, it's not that that's the only thing that's going to help someone experiencing trauma and fear, but it is a tried and tested way. And of course, there's benefit to gazing on what we could call reflected beauty. Things in this world that reflect and show something of the beauty of the one who has made all things good, God himself. Being out in nature, or getting creative, listening to music, admiring art, even being among nice people. There's beauty to be seen in that, because these all reflect the beauty of God who made them. But where we're going to see and be able to gaze upon ultimate beauty is in the person and work of Jesus Christ. And now, you may not think that there is much beauty to be seen in a man dying on a cross. But actually, that moment and all that is involved in that's not just the highlight of 1 year. That is the highlight of the whole of history, the time and place where God came to live with and identify with us as people, where his glory, the glory of his character and being, is most clearly seen. And seeing God's beauty doesn't stop with the cross. It continues as we see every time that someone becomes a Christian. Every time someone finds courage in the face of fear as they know God with them and for them. Every time Jesus comes close and tells us, I'm with you, I'm for you, I love you. Look at what I'm doing and have done for you. God's beauty is going to be seen in even more fullness when Jesus comes again. And finally and fully we get to dwell with him as he comes to remake the heavens and the earth. And in perfect paradise, as perfect people, we get to live in his immediate presence. That's going to be the ultimate antidote for all the chaos and calamities that we experience in life as we gaze on the beauty of the Lord. But even now, seeing glimpses, gazing on his beauty, the beauty of Jesus, that's what captures our hearts and our affections more than anything else, to draw us out in new and deeper love and loyalty for him, in finding our strength and hope and courage in him. It's him, Jesus, that we need to be making our life goal, to gaze on up close and personal, as if gazing into his eyes in adoration and wonder. But even telling our fears about God and gazing on the beauty of the Lord isn't a magic instant cure for all our fears amidst the chaos and calamities of this life. It helps. There are ways, like the psalmist here, that we can find true courage to carry on in the face of fear. But be sure your fears are stubborn and will persist. As Steve reminded us last week, fear and faith can occupy the same space. And so there's a third helpful thing that the psalmist does here that needs to be part of our story and experience. But we need to be telling God about our fears. And this is what the psalmist does in sentences 7 to 12. And there's a clear shift here in the psalm from the psalmist talking to and addressing himself to talking to and addressing God. He says, "Hear my voice when I call, Lord. Be merciful to me and answer me. My heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, God, my Saviour." David's worried. He's fearful that God is hiding his face from him, that he's turned away from him in anger, that he might reject and forsake him. Now, as tends to be the case with our fears, they're irrational and exaggerated, often worst case scenario. Someone has described us as prophets of doom, always fearing and predicting the worst. That's how we are. That's how I am. And God, he doesn't laugh at us for that. He doesn't tell us off for it. Rather, he wants to hear from us. He wants us to tell him of our fears. And now, as David does that, he can't help but mix that in with faith. Do you notice that the God he fears might hide from him is the God his heart is telling him to seek? The God who he fears might reject him now is the God he has been acknowledging to be his helper in the past. And this is how we are. This strange mix of faith and unbelief. This combination of fear on the one hand and a certain amount of confidence in God on the other. Rarely Do we ever hit the lowest of low points where all our faith and belief in God just seems to disappear and be drained away entirely, and we can't even acknowledge that he exists? We tend to be on a sliding scale of little faith to rising, sometimes strong faith. And if you're like me and the psalmist here, we're a yo-yo in this, going up and down on that scale. At one moment with little, almost no faith, then it can almost be in the next breath we're expressing real strong faith in God. And again, God knows how we are. And he wants us to be talking to him about this, to honestly be expressing our fear mixed in with our faith and desire and longing for God. As David puts it, amidst the yo-yo of faith and unbelief, my heart says of you, seek his face. Your face, Lord, I will seek. And as he continues in sentence 10, his faith at this point seems to be on the rise, at least initially. He's saying, though my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Teach me your way, Lord. Lead me in a straight path because of my oppressors. But then fear seems to kick in again. Do not hand me over to the desires of my foes, for false witnesses rise up against me, spouting malicious accusations. Clearly, David is in a really fearful and chaotic situation. And surprise, surprise, he is fearful and chaotic. All over the place, it seems. But what is good, really good, is that he is like this before God, in prayer to God, pouring out his heart to God. He's experiencing genuinely fearful, chaotic situations. He talks about his father and his mother forsaking him, of enemies out to get him, of people lying about him and spreading false rumors and gossip about him. And we can't expect, and there is no expectation in those situations, that we're just going to be calm and stoic and shrug these things off and pretend they're not affecting and worrying us. The expectation, rather, is that right in the middle of mess and chaos, in moments of weakness and fear, when unbelief and doubts and questions kick in, we'll be bringing all of these things to God and telling him how we are with this mixture of faith and unbelief. And this leads to sentence 13, the conclusion of this psalm, where the psalmist reaffirms and resolves trust and confidence in God. All that he's been doing, telling his fears about God, making it his life goal to gaze on the beauty of God, telling God about his fears, it's begun to grow some seeds of confidence to carry on in the face of fear and the chaos and calamities of life. It's going to remain messy and chaotic and up and down, ebbing and flowing, because that's how the life of faith is. If we're honest, that's the rhythm of our Christian story. It's not a steady upward curve, but this faltering, sometimes seemingly failing battle for faith, for courage in the face of fear and chaos. But deep down, for all the ups and downs, there is this unshakable hope and confidence in God. It's never is a confidence in ourselves. It's a confidence in the reality, in the mercy, in the resolve, in the faithfulness of the one who keeps us no matter what. But once we've tasted just something of the goodness of God, when we've begun that lifelong gaze and regazing and refocusing on the beauty of the Lord, but once we've known something of his favour and kindness towards us, we'll know that despite everything, we will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Right here and now, we'll see something of the goodness of God, especially as we see it in the face of Jesus Christ and his dealings with us and the way that he treats us and the way that he comes to us and cares for us. Despite everything, despite all the darkness and chaos, God is our light and our salvation. At times, it may appear as only a glimmer and a flicker of light in the darkness, of hope in the face of chaos and fear. But that taste, that glimpse of the goodness of the Lord, it keeps us going. It grows in us a hope and a confidence, faltering and feeble as it may be, that we will be more and more able to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. We're never rejected. We're never forsaken. God is for us. God is with us. God will bring us safely home to be with himself forever and ever. Many people's story is that at times they're so overwhelmed by fear and the chaos of life that they're ready to jack it all in and give up on life, give up on God. But we can't. We find we can't. We find that, no, we've tasted, we've seen something of the goodness of God. And we cling to that knowledge and hope that we will see more of the goodness of God, even in the land of the living. And so with that comes a growing confidence, a growing resolve, a courage to continue in the face of fear and chaos, re-resolving, retelling ourselves, be strong, take heart, wait on the Lord. I wonder if there are echoes of this in your story. Is there chaos and fear? Is that a reality of your life as it is with so many? Well, be telling your fears about God. Be making it your life goal to gaze on beauty rather than the horror and ugliness of life. And be telling God about your fears, so that confidence and courage and this kind of resolve and faith will be growing in you. Amen.